Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dice Tower. My name is Z Garcia.
I'm Camilla.
And I'm Mike Delisio.
Today we are taking a look at Weirdwood Manor. This is a new game from a new company, from a new publisher, a new designer, based on a series of books that I believe are for young adults.
Yeah, I think it's young adults. It's not quite kids.
Yes.
So it's definitely a chapter book series.
Right.
Yeah.
So Weirdwood Manor here. There's also a video game that I've heard is out there
I didn't know
on a
that.
phone. You can like an iOS type game. But anyway, in the game here, this is a cooperative adventure in which you're going to be trapped in this Weirdwood Manor. You're going to be spinning the hallways around, trying to traverse the manor itself, trying to take down a big bad. 3 come in this box. We are going to take a quick look at how the game works, and then we'll be back with some thoughts on the game itself. Camilla's going to take it away.
So as always, this is going to be a very high-level overview, not going to be a how to play, but just generally give you a feel for how the game is going to play, so that when we're talking about different aspects of it, you kind of have a reference point. If you do want to see how to play, we do have a live play of this game, or we'll play it live, while me and Z were up at Mike's house, so you can check that out and watch us fumble through learning how to play. Alright, so this is a cooperative game in which ultimately you are probably trying to save Lady Weirdwood. And I say that because it's going to come with 3 different monsters, each of which have their own winning and losing conditions. But in this case with the Chaos Ogre, which is the recommended start one, you want to kill the Chaos Ogre before he drains Lady Weirdwood here of her health, or before the entire manor becomes blighted. And we'll go over what that means in a couple minutes. So on your turn, you're going to have a handful of cards, or some cards in your hand equal to your health. Your health is not a life where you can die, but it does correlate to your hand size. So here, you start with 3 health. There's 3 cards in hand. On your turn, you always have to play a card. So you'll choose a card, and you're going to play it into one of the 4 starting slots on your board up above. So in this case, I'm going to pull our board down here a little bit, and let's say that I would play this Touch the Fae here into the morning slot. So after you play a card, then you're going to take and move this inner day ring to one of the spaces corresponding to the time of day here. So for example, I played into the morning. We're currently in the morning, because you can see this is pointed to it. I have to turn this ring 1 or 2 spots. I say 1 or 2 spots because you might be able to see that's going to open and close different rooms of the manor. So depending on where I am, I might need to turn it a little bit further. If you're on the 3rd spot of the time of day that you played into, you do have to go all the way around the ring to come back. In that case, you pass over this little arrow here, so you also have to advance the day marker, which is going to change the outer 2 rings. So once you play your card, at that point you can take your actions. You have actions that are going to be on the card. Some of them are text, some are symbols. You have move, you have initiate a fight, a lot of different actions, but you're going to take those actions in any order you want, or one of your player abilities as well. If you ever have a card that you don't want to play, or, for example, you cannot afford the cost of the card, as shown here in red in this perplexing poem of Guile, then you can play it face down into your player area here, and if you do that, you get a movement, a fight, or a resource of your choice. The resources are going to be the magic, your flames, or your min, it's called, or your knowledge in the books. And I'm going to take that back. Actually, resources are not the magic here. They are scarabs. These are magic kind of sources that you earn through actions. So the resources are the scarabs, the knowledge, or the min, but you also have access to magic through varying abilities as you go. So you'll go through and you'll take your actions, in this case touching the Fae. You would get 3 of these min and just add it to your player board over here. You also have these, every character is going to have their individual player actions that you can take at any point. And if you ever move up any of the tracks here at the bottom, which is going to be indicated by this symbol right here, for example in this room, if you see this, you get the point. It looks like a point. It's actually you get to bump up on your player board on one of these 3 tracks below. And this is going to be how you're going to kind of level up your character. The top one's going to be focusing on that magic resource we talked about. It's going to get you wild resources. The middle one's going to be your battle one. That's where you're going to get extra hits in battle, extra shields, and also increase this health, which is going to give you a bigger hand size. And the bottom is going to help you be able to draw these Warden Tactic cards. Warden Tactic cards are other things that you can play on your turn, which are going to be active as long as they are on top of a card. So for example, let's say again, this Touch the Fae was here and I had a Warden Tactic card, I would play it on the top of mine up here. And now, until I take a hand clearing action or a board clearing action, I get 2 additional shields in every battle that I fight. This is also going to change these symbols on the side of the cards because as you can see, they all have half symbols. If you ever are able to match those symbols up, let me dig through my cards here. So let's say if you're ever able to match these to make a full symbol, so example of these were played like this, I now have an extra hit in every battle when they are out here in my tableau and played out. If you are ever, at the end of your turn, full like this, you're gonna have to clear out your player board. So let's go ahead and go through that. After you take your turns and you take all your actions, any of the player ones you want to do, any of the actions on the cards, or using any room abilities, because as you're moving through the manor here, when you stop in an empty room, you get to use that room's ability. Or if you're in a fight and you're able to clear that scarab off, then you can use the room ability as well. Once you complete all your actions, at that point, you're going to go to the end of the phase. The end of the phase, the monster is going to activate and he has his own deck of cards here. The bottom is going to show how much he's going to advance the time track himself, and the top is going to give you some clue or indication of what he's going to do that turn. So here, we'll see that he's going to advance the time 4, and he is going to likely attack. So, and these are going to be different. Sometimes he'll just move. Sometimes it's going to be something with a power card where he might be leveling up, something like that. So in this case, he would first advance the time 4. And again, just like we did for ourselves, we're looking at this spot right here and advancing 1, 2, 3, 4. And again, if we ever go over this spot here and the day changes, we would advance the day as well. So the manor's constantly changing. At that point, we would flip this card over and read through what it says. This one here, for example, if he is in the same room as Lady Weirdwood, then he would knock her health down. There's going to be lots of different things, again, with him moving. And if you ever have a card that has this symbol up here in the top right corner, then it's going to slot into his board up here. Depending on the time or the day of the round, the round that you're in or the day of the game, it makes him calm, angry, or enraged. And that's going to be the level that you're going to slot this in at. So green for calm. Let's see, we are on day 3 right here, which is calm. So it would just go into this one. As this clock advances, then these would advance up as well. In this case, when he's calm, nothing happens. But once he gets to that middle angry phase, he will get 2 additional hits in every battle. These are active up here up until he actually goes into a battle and initiates a battle. Either you fight him, or if one of these have him attack you, you will go into a battle, at which case you guys will each assemble your dice pool, him according to his board, yourself according to your forging dice that you had here, where you're going to be slotting in here to give yourself more dice in battle. And you roll against each other and taking hits as you need to. So once you resolve the monster card at the end of your turn, you'll go in and see if you have an empty slot. If you don't have an empty slot, then you can go ahead and choose to refresh. But if you don't have an empty slot, you have to refresh. So the way you'll do that is the first thing is you take a scarab phase. Starting with this middle ring here, you're going to take all the scarabs at the start of day here and go in a clockwise direction, and they're all going to try to move to the outside of the board. So for example, this scarab here, his room is open, he would go out, but he can't go into this outside one, so he's going to go counterclockwise and into here. Moving through here, this one as well can come out, and it's actually going to come into our room. It is important to note that scarabs are going to stop movement. Because we're in there, we can leave with him, but if we were trying to go through a room with a scarab, for example, if I wanted to go into this inner ring, I would not be able to go through that room because it's going to stop my movement. And then the inside ring as well, they would all try to come out. If a room ever has 2 scarabs in it, it becomes blighted, which means we would take and turn it upside down, and the scarabs are replaced. Those scarabs have to be defeated, which have 1 health point, or hit point if you will, before you can unblight the room. To unblight the room, you have to be in the room. It has to be clear of scarabs or the Fey monster that you're fighting here. You have to pay the resource cost shown, and then you get, again, that upgrade symbol there. So you'd get to, in this case, 3 upgrades on your player board, and it is now unblighted, and you would be able to use that room again. You can always go through blighted rooms or into blighted rooms, but you can't use their special power if they are blighted. After you've moved all the scarabs, then you'll go ahead and refill them as well. Anywhere in this inner ring that doesn't have a scarab will spawn one, and if there is at least 1 scarab in this throne room, which is the middle one will spawn in there as well. All right, the last thing that you'll do after the end of the turn, after you finish the scarab phase, is you'll clean up all these cards. They go into the discard pile. You'll refresh any companions that you might have, and so they would be over here to the side of your board. If they are used and exhausted, meaning they're turned upside down, you would refresh them, and then you draw back up to your hand limit. So here, if the health is still 3, you would draw a hand of 3 cards. If the deck is ever empty, you simply shuffle it and make sure you have the full deck to draw from. After that, your turn is complete. It would go to the next player. This is going to continue until you have either completed a win condition or a loss condition. So for example, the Chaos Ogre here, he wants to either drain Lady Weirdwood of her health and kill her, or he wants to have 8 blighted rooms. And again, 2 scarabs in a room are going to blight it, and if he ever has 8 blighted rooms, then he instantly wins. As you do flip those back over, of course, the rooms heal and that track goes back down as well. Additional loss condition is you have to do one of those 2 things within 12 days. So if you ever reach the end of the 12th day going into the 13th day, you would lose. But that's going to be generally, again, how to play, very high level overview, not going much into what the board can do. Just know that each room does do different things. Some of them are going to give you resources. Some of them are going to help you recruit companions, or again, maybe, or maybe forge some dice, which are going to give you upgraded dice to battle. The dice are either going to be balanced, they're either going to be attack heavy, or they're going to be defense dice. And so you kind of build your own pool as well. Very high level overview, but let's go up top and talk about what we thought of the game.
So none of us are really familiar with the book series that this is based on, but the gameplay itself, or rather the production of the game itself is incredibly vibrant, and clearly you can base books off of this stuff. There's enough lore here. There's a lot going on. This is a vibrant setting, a very rich world, and that's one of my big positives right there. That this box contains within it a lot of character, a lot of neat interactions, cool abilities, and fun people to both inhabit and go up against.
Yeah, you definitely feel kind of the depth of the lore, as you talked about. You know, because it comes with, what, 6 characters, I believe, and then 3 baddies. In the overview, I specifically went over the Ogre, but the Min Wraith, and then another one, I can't remember, Thios, something like that, another guy. Another big bad. And they all feel individual, the characters feel individual, and you feel their individual personalities as well. So definitely I can see how there would be some lore behind this in the books.
Yeah, and I had no connection to this IP, much like you two did, but I'm with you in the sense that it looks already kind of like a fully realized world, and I think you get that from being able to pull from already so much lore that's out there. The art is really attractive. It's got kind of this playful feel to it, while, you know, spooky in the sense of like, gosh, I think about the old cartoons in the 70s that were like the monster cartoon type of a thing. Not so much spooky, but more kind of playful. And so I like that. Like you said, a nice, you know, amount of enemies and characters. Plenty of stuff in the box to keep you occupied for a while.
And I have to say that the abilities that they included in the game are pretty interesting stuff. I like that as you explore the game more and more, especially the player characters, the baddies, they do some interesting stuff, but it's nothing I haven't seen before. The ogre's kind of random. The Min Wraith is does a lot of healing.
Yeah.
Does a lot of sort of like consuming and healing and can move through walls.
Yeah.
But the players, there's some really neat ideas in play there. There's a couple of characters in there, the harder ones. They're the ones that they sort of, don't recommend you begin with, and I can see why. But they're outside the box. One of them literally throws out the whole idea of the time limitations in the game. It just throws it out. But you can't have the sidekicks with that one. You can't hire those people as companions. It also lets you, take a card. Anybody can pay and store a card at that board, and then somebody else could come along and take that card. So literally messing with one of the fundamental ideas, my deck is my own.
Right.
There's some funky stuff in there, so I commend them for coming up with really clever and outside-the-box mechanisms when it comes to those little things you yourself can do.
And unique ways to portray personalities too.
Yeah.
Because again, back to that, they doesn't just feel like mechanically this is an interesting character. It's like, no, they have personalities, and you start to see the way they interact with the other characters and things like that. It's really unique.
And the player powers do actually seem to work. Sometimes when they'll have these variable player powers and they've got the base characters and then they've got the more advanced characters, sometimes those advanced characters almost make you feel like you're playing a different game, or they're too convoluted to keep track of. I really feel like the way they did it here works very well. Sure, you may want to play one of the basic characters so you understand the main flow of the game, but after a game or two you can go with those new characters, and they do change things up, but not so much that it's overwhelming. So I do like that a lot. Something else I wanted to mention is that I think a big hook of this game, it's both a gameplay thing and it's a production thing, is the shifting of the rooms, right? And I really think it's a neat idea. It's an ambitious idea. We'll get into whether I think that they were successful, but I applaud them for taking that kind of a risk in their first game, production-wise and mechanic-wise. It's a really cool idea.
Yeah, speaking of a couple of negative things, and again, we can jump back and forth here, but I will say that I think the gameplay and, that cooperation is hard to manifest because I found it hard to do a lot of forward planning, especially when you're playing with a larger group. And this plays up to, 5, I believe. Right. I think outside of even 3, add 3 a little bit, but outside of 3, it's just really hard to do any kind of solid forward planning. And the place where it bites you the most, and it just kind of feels unfair, is the forward clock. You just don't know which spot to leave open by the time your turn comes around again. It might just be that you have a particularly, disadvantageous opening left.
Right.
And you can't look ahead because the bad guy moves too. They also move it. You can't just plan around the table. So I had a very hard time feeling like that. My destiny was in my own hands, and I wasn't just fully reacting. Sometimes very perilously so.
Yeah, I think so as well. I definitely felt that you just wait till your turn and do the best you can on your turn.
Right.
And that doesn't mean there's a whole lot of downtime, because there are rooms where other characters are, jumping in, or you're doing stuff for your other, not teammates, what do you call it? The other players, oh, I get this and then you get that. And so there is stuff to do on other people's turns if you keep that player count low. I definitely think between the downtime on the turns and then also the, like you said, the planning ahead, for me, this is strictly like a 2 or 3 player game. And 3 is like pushing it. All right, 2 of us know how to play, and we'll bring a 3rd one in. And that kind of brings me to one of my negatives is I think the rulebook is great to learn to play, to read through and go, this is interesting, and you're reading through it and it's like, okay, I'm getting it, I'm understanding, but at the end you don't feel like you're ready to play, and then it's really difficult to reference. And so I think the rule book needed a little bit, that's where kind of the first time designer, kind of shows. It needed someone that knows how to write rule books a little bit better.
And an index.
And an index for sure. So yeah, as you're reading through it, you're like, I get it, but at the end, now what do I do?
Right.
And where do I find what to do? I don't really know. I felt that was tricky.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off some of those ideas because they're all in my negative category here. Number one, I feel like the game just on a strictly, it's too long. I think even with 2, it would feel too long for what you're doing in the game. I didn't play it at 2, but I just feel the game at its base is too long, and I do find that oftentimes there is a fair amount of downtime, and like Z said, there's really not much you can do because the board state's going to change so much by the time it get back to your turn. Maybe not as much in a 2-player game. I can't say that for sure. Also, I've noticed that there can be maybe midway through the game kind of a steamrolling that begins to happen where loss is almost a given, and you feel like there's a lot of time left in the game, but you just feel like, if anything, you're trying to stay even. And so I do feel like there can be some situations where you're playing this long game, and about midway through, you kind of look around and go, I don't think we've got much of a chance here. And that would be fine if it was a 45-minute game, but in a 2-hour game, I think that's troublesome. And the other thing regarding to the rule book is that this is a game that, while it has a rule book that is good for teaching you the game, as you said, Camilla, it's a book you're going to need to be in constantly. And I'm talking about even after you've played the game 1, 2, 3 times, you still need to refer to that rule book, because I feel overall the game is a little bit inelegant, a little bit clunky, a little bit convoluted. Again, for what you're doing, it's a mid to heavyweight, midweight cooperative game, but I just feel like you're having to go through a lot of machinations to do not really that much. So,
yeah, it reminds me a little bit of the way, not gameplay or anything, but the idea that in Robinson Crusoe, I remember playing that game once, and I was at a fair somewhere, and the designer walked up and glanced at it and said, "Oh, you've lost." We were about a third of the way through, and I think it's because there were things that hadn't been done yet that should have been done by that point. And he could glance at the game and go, "Oh, you didn't do that yet? It's too late. You're behind the curvature of this game. You're not going to make up the difference." I feel like this game very much has that. In fact, I found online in preparing for this review that the publishers of Weirdwood Manor here put out a strategy sort of tips and tricks, if you would. And they said, "Oh, we were going to include this, but we decided not to. We were running out of space for the literature in the game." And I wish they would have, because it makes it clear that there are things you should do. Like, hey, first turn, get an extra fighting die. Get it. You're going to need it. Invest in that early. And that's not necessarily apparent, Get a companion as quickly as you can. Again, yes, these are all good things, but they're not necessarily apparent. At no point in the game does it make me feel like, oh, I better do this or else. And I better do it immediately or else. That's the thing, Yeah, I should do it, but if I fall behind the curvature of the game, I'm done. And I agree with you, Mike. It does have that feeling of, we should just all give up, right? We should start again or call it. I wish that was included in the game, because the game, while it is based on, I guess, again, sort of teenager-focused literature, is a thinky game. There's a ton going on in here. This is not a game you go and pick up at Walmart or at Target. There's a ton happening. It is difficult to grasp. It is tricky to do well.
I think I'm on the opposite of that, though, whereas I'm glad it wasn't included because I think that's part of the discovery of the game. You know, I mean, if I think about any of my favorite games, if they came with a strategy guide of, hey, here's your best case scenario, you have to do these things if you want to win. Okay, well, there's the prescription to win. I don't need to play them. You know, and so I think I like that this is a cooperative game that you do learn and you get better at. You're probably going to get wrecked your first time you play. Your second time, you're probably going to get wrecked, you know? And then that first time you move up and go to the Min Wraith, you're going to get wrecked a couple times, you know, before you kind of start to feel like you have a handle on it. And I guess for me, maybe my threshold for that is higher. I don't mind that the game, you have to kind of learn the game, and I don't mean rules, I mean learn that strategy of it, and I enjoy that discovery of strategy.
Yeah, I wish it was... I worry that, again, people will bounce off of it because it seems, not that I'm getting better, it just sort of has that impenetrable feel. Interesting,
yeah. I don't get that from it.
As far as the gameplay, I agree with you, Mike, as well, that I think it does feel kind of fiddly, and the game can be long. And I, by far, would say that my favorite player count is 2.
Yes,
you know, I think
agree.
It is obviously a better at 2 game. There's more control. You have more things to discuss and cooperate upon, and you will just have more abilities that, you know, there's fewer abilities at the table, but you have the ability to control more of what the moving parts are.
Right, and it doesn't feel like by the time it comes to your turn again, it's a gamble of where in the day it's going to be. You know, that's a little mitigated. Yes, maybe you get a bad monster card. It's like, you know, thought I'd be a 2, but he actually turned it 4. That really hurt us. And then you feel like you're reacting to it rather than just getting hosed. I think, you know, I definitely think for me it's a 2-player, maybe into a 3-player if I'm feeling up to it, kind of.
Well, do you have any other positives that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so Mike kind of talked earlier about the undertaking of this moving board. Mike, it sounds like you might disagree here, so jump in after if you want. I really think they nailed it. I think the board works really smoothly. I think that there's probably too many rooms. You can get lost in the manor sometimes and be like, okay, where can I do this? Here, here, or here. Those are blocked off. And so there's just a lot of... I don't know, a lot of options to go through in order to plan your turn. And like you said, you can't plan ahead. So I think lesser rooms would have been better, but as far as the actual production of it, I really think they nailed it. The upgrades, you can get the deluxe. I think they're nice, but they're not necessary.
Sure.
I really enjoy them, but the manor functions very smoothly. I never had a problem with that ring turning around. I never had a problem flipping over. I felt like I was damaging the components, taking out a room to blight it. It just worked really, really well from the production standpoint.
I agree on some of it. So production-wise, I agree that as far as the moving, the smoothness of that works very well. We never really had an issue. The way the rooms, you know, like you said, can flip over. All of that's done well, and the quality of the components helps a lot. My issue with the actual practical working of that idea, which again I think is really cool, is more mechanical in the sense that there are times you can just get stuck in a room, and that leads to a situation where I feel like there's too many what feels like wasted turns, and a lot of time it's because of you're stuck in a room or you have physically no way to get to a room. You mentioned that strategy guide where they're saying, yeah, get a weapon die as soon as you can, get a companion as soon as you can. Well, that is predicated on the fact that you actually can get one of those, that you can actually reach it, that the room's not blocked off, doesn't have something in there that keeps you from getting to it. And the other thing I would mention just on a production, really, I think the only negative as far as the shifting rooms on the production value or the production level is that I think it can be a little bit challenging sometimes to be able to look down at that board, which has a lot going on, and parse out, okay, is this path open or closed? Can I get to that room? And so you're doing a lot of this kind of visual and mental gymnastics to find out. You think, oh, you move and you're going, and you go, oh no, it's blocked. I have to wait till next turn, or, so that's the issue I have on a practical level, is that maybe some of the way the lines between open and closed doors work can be a little bit tough. And then just on a mechanical level, getting stuck in rooms feeling like you have wasted turns more often than I would like to in a cooperative game.
So where are you coming down on this one, Mike?
Yeah, so overall, just kind of recapping the positives and the negatives, I feel like this game has a tremendous amount of visual appeal. It's got character, it's got style. It feels the furthest thing from generic, okay? And that is a very positive thing. This has a life of its own. I have no background at all with the intellectual property, but I feel like I have a pretty good feel for how this world kind of would be presented in other forms, whether it's video games or in books. So that's a big plus. Has a lot of style and character. The negatives are things that that we've talked about. I feel like it's too long overall. I feel like there's so much that you need to track on every turn. It's very easy to forget or miss something or accidentally cheat because there's a lot you have to kind of administer on each turn. You have to be in that rule book much more often than I think you should have to. And so overall, a charming game that doesn't quite hit the mark for me on a mechanical level. I'm going to end up giving this a 5 out of 10. I feel like this is a game I wanted to like so much more. And I was like, okay, well, let's give it another chance. Let's give it another chance. And it just never quite got there for me. I feel like a version 1.5 for this could be outstanding. Some tweaks that they can make that would, I think, make this game really, really be fantastic. But as of now, it's a 5.
I'm close to you, and I echo a lot of what you're saying there, Mike. And I would say I'm even more interested in a 2.0 here or a second edition, because there's quite a bit in here that is charming. It's captivating. I'll say this for it. I'm giving it a 6 out of 10, and I'll say this: it continues to grow on me as I've explored more of the characters, as I've played more games, 2-player games, as I've messed more with what's in here. I'm softening up on the things I think. I think 6 is about my cap, though, without some serious reworking of some ideas in here. I agree there's a lot of rooms. They could do with fewer rooms, okay? I think the iconography, I don't think you guys had a problem with it, but I had a little bit of a problem with, like, a cost is the same symbol, but in red shift. I'm like, no, that's not a different symbol. That's a different color. So I think that's, again, little things like that. A second edition of this could truly be a spectacular cooperative game. But it needs it. It's not something I can just house rule. It's more ingrained in its DNA than that. Yeah. So for me, I'm giving this one a 6. I think it's neat, and what a rich setting, and what a bunch of fun characters. The game isn't quite there yet for me.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Funny you talked about symbology, because that's one of the positives I had written down, was the symbology is really easy. I think that's the one thing I never had to look in the rule book for. It just made a lot of sense. For whatever reason, it clicked in my mind. But yeah, this was a difficult one to rate. I'm going to come down at a 7.5 on it. But it was difficult because as you're talking about the negatives and the things that bothered you, I'm like, yeah, yep, I can see that. Doesn't bother me, you know what I mean?
Sure,
so I don't know, I think like this is just one that I can definitely see those flaws. I do think it's long. I do think some of the rules get fiddly. I do think it needs some streamlining on the rooms themselves. Right. Maybe the ability to plan a little bit more ahead. It's the Min Wraith was better than like the Chaos Ogre on that, of course with their personalities, but little things like that, it's like all the complaints, I'm like, I'm right there with you. Maybe my threshold is just higher for that. I was charmed by this, and I think it's a lot to do with the theme, and I really think that the manor itself, which is the gimmick, if you will, of this, worked really well and was an interesting puzzle. It's the more I played it, maybe it's the better I got at it.
Sure.
And I realized, no, there is a lot of strategy behind this. You go in thinking you're going to play this flippant cooperative game, and then you start realizing, no, this is actually a puzzle game. This is, we need to think, we need to try to mitigate for all these different circumstances, things like that, so that we don't, like Mike said, got stuck in a room. You know, I think in my last play of it, I never got stuck once, but it took multiple plays to get there, to kind of learn the manner, learn the characters, that kind of stuff to get to that point. And I think that's what this game brings. It's bringing all that lore, and it just takes me a while to get caught up in that, you know. But I was very charmed by it, and would definitely recommend it if you understand those negatives, because they are there, and I'm not saying they're not valid or they're not there.
Yeah.
But my threshold for them's higher, I guess, and I was just really charmed. So 7.5 for me.
Especially if you are someone who goes narrow and deep with games, okay? Like, if you're going to buy
That's
this
me.
game and you're going to play this game a lot,
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah.
You'll eventually get there. If you are someone who loves to dabble in games and you want to play a little bit of a lot of games, I do not think this game reveals itself very
Yes,
well.
I completely agree.
I don't think it makes a good first impression. I do not think it reveals and blossoms very, easily. You got to drag it out of there. So, so there you go, folks. That's going to do it for us for Weirdwood Manor. That's a 7.5 high score. That's a seal of approval from us. And that's going to do it. Thanks very much for watching. My name is Zeke Garcia.
I'm Camilla.
And I'm Mike DeLisio.
And you better watch out for the Chaos Ogre.
Oh, he's tough.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you like this review or whatever you just watched, wasn't it amazing? Check out our channel, Dice Tower. We have all kinds of things. We review games, we do top 10s, we play games live. It's all about board games, but especially the people who play them. Check out Dice Tower YouTube channel.